Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Meretz Hashem Daf Vav Amud Aleph. We're continuing to learn Hilchos Chol HaMoed. I'm going to pick up today on Daf Hey Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch, with Siman Tov Kuf Lamed Dalet Siv Gimel. Now, the truth is, we began Siv Gimel in the last share, but we didn't finish it, and for the sake of continuity, it's not a lot of extra. I'm going to begin again from the beginning of Siv Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Siv Gimel. Mevian mi beisa ulman kelim shehem l'tzarech hamayid kegoin karum ukesasais utzluchios. You may bring from the house of a craftsman kelim that you need for the mayid. And the examples that the Mechaber gives are pillows, blankets, and sluchios are plates or other types of eating utensils. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here in Ois Katan Tezvav, Mevian, you can pick these items up from the craftsman's house, from the Beisa Uman. Aval ein molichan lebeisa Uman afilu l'tzarech hamayid. However, you're not allowed to bring them to the Beisa Uman for repair on Chol HaMoed, even if you need them for the Mayid. So if you have a fellow who repairs or manufactures blankets, pillows, or he makes serving utensils of different types for eating, so you can pick up something from him if you need it for the Mayid, but you cannot drop off something for repair by him, even if you need it for the Mayid. Continues the Mechaber, and the Mechaber says, Aval kelim she'enam l'tzarech hamayid. But when it comes to kelim that are not needed for the Mayid at all, they have no purpose on Yom Tov, kegoin macharesha, for example, a plow, or if you want to pick up raw wool that had been given in to be dyed, ein mevian, you can't bring those home from the craftsman. So if you had given out your plow for repair, you can't pick up your plow on Chol HaMoed because a plow has absolutely no use for the Mayid. If you had given in raw wool to have wool dyed, you can't go pick up that wool from the dyer on Chol HaMoed because you can't do anything with it. You're not going to be manufacturing anything out of the wool on Chol HaMoed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Nice Cotton Tezayin, Ein Mevin, Bein Shehu Uman Gemarai B'Mayid Oikaidem. This is true regardless of whether the craftsman had finished his work before Yom Tov or he finished it on Yom Tov. So even if the craftsman already repaired your plow before Yom Tov, and you just didn't have a chance to pick it up before Yom Tov, now you want to pick it up on Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to. The same thing if you had given, let's say, wool in to be dyed, and he finished it before Yom Tov, you're not allowed to pick it up on Chol HaMoed. Or if you finished it on Yom Tov. V'atam, the reason for this is, Mishum Tercha. Why are you being matriach yourself? Why are you being busy picking these things up from the craftsman on Chol HaMoed? They have no Yom Tov use. They have no use. You're not allowed to plow your field on Chol HaMoed. So why are you busy with this on Chol HaMoed? V'yeshaimer, and there are those that say, says the Mishnah Berurah, that the reason why it's also to pick these items up is mishum sheyizberu shenasan l'sakten b'mayid v'yomer sha'uman tiknu b'mayid. If somebody sees you picking up your plow from the repair shop on Chol HaMoed, he's going to think that you actually gave the plow in to be repaired so that the person should do the repair on Chol HaMoed, which you're not allowed to do. Well, if he's at, according to this, afilu mi bayis l'bayis ba'is achotzer, deleka tircha. So, but if this is the problem with picking it up from the repair person, then even if the repair person lives in the same chotzer as you, so there isn't much tircha involved, you're going to pick up something from next door and bring it over to your house, and even if the repair person is not a Yid, but he's a non-Jew, also lahavi, you're still not allowed to pick this up on Chol HaMoed, because people are going to think that you gave the plow into the repair shop so that it should be repaired for you on Chol HaMoed, and you're not allowed to do that. Because of our pre-begadim, it could be that for mitzvah purposes, even if it's something that's not required for the Mayid, it could be that you're allowed to pick up something from a non-Jewish craftsman. Continues the Mechaber, and the Mechaber says, second line from the bottom, near the end of the line. V'em ein lo uman ma yoichal. Let's say this craftsman, he lives hand to mouth, and he really needs the payment for the job that he did for you. So there's a pressing reason why you want to go to him and you want to pay him on Chol HaMoed. V'em ein lo uman ma yoichal. What should you do? Noisen loy scharai umanichan etzloi. You should pay the craftsman, but leave the item by him. So if you have a plow repair person, and he went ahead and he repaired your plow, and now it's still by him on Chol HaMoed, and you want to go to him because you want to pay him the $200, he really needs the money. He calls you up, he says, look, I really need the money. So you don't go and pick up the plow. Rather, go give him the money, but don't take the plow. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here, nice cut in Yud Zayin. Noisen lois charai. You could pay him. Now, says the Chavetz Chaim, what chiddush is there in the fact that you could pay him? Hu adin da afilu yesh la ma yoichal gam ken muter liten lois charai. You don't have to come on to the fact that the repair person is desperate for your payment in order to be matir you to pay him. There's nothing wrong with going to the craftsman and paying him on Chol HaMoed. You could pay the craftsman even if he's not desperate for your money. So certainly when the Mechaber tells me over here that if the craftsman is in need of your payment, you could go pay him and leave the item by him, that's not the chiddush that he's trying to tell you. He's not telling you a chiddush that you could pay a craftsman on Chol HaMoed. Rather, explains the Mishnah Berurah on Vav Amud Aleph, Elahachi Kamar. Rather, this is what the Mechaber is telling you. Afal pi she'ein loy ma yoichal. Even though the craftsman is desperate for your payment, and therefore he's pressing you for his money, titzarich liten loy scharoi, and therefore you need to pay him, so you're going to pay him on Chol HaMoed, v'hava amina, and therefore I might have thought the muter litlon etzloi. Now you should be able to pick up your plow and bring your plow home. Kedei shaliyitva enushenis. And you see, now here's your quandary. Your quandary is like this. The craftsman is calling you up and he's saying, look, I really need your money. So you might think, since I have to go pay the craftsman because he's pressing me for the money, once I'm going to pay him, let me take my plow. If I don't take my plow is going to remain by him. And then after Yom Tov, when I go to pick up the plow, he's going to say, hey, you have to pay me. I'm going to say, what do you mean? I paid you during Chol HaMoed. He's going to say, oh, you paid me? If you would have paid me, you would have taken the plow home. Obviously, if I still have the plow, you didn't pay me yet. So he's going to claim that I have to pay him for a second time. He's going to claim the money. He's going to claim double the money from me. So I might have thought that gives me a heter to pick up my plow on Chol HaMoed. Kamash Malon the Mechaber, no. V'hava amina the mutter litlan etzloi kadesha loyit ve'enushenis. I might have thought that since I have a pressing reason why I have to pay the craftsman, now the halacha is going to allow me to pick up my item, so I shouldn't be forced to pay twice. Kamash Malon, no. The noisen loy scharai or manichan etzloi. The chiddush that the Mechaber is saying is not the fact that you could pay him. The chiddush is the chumrah that even though you're going to pay him, you still can't pick up your item. You have to leave it by the craftsman. Inami, or it could be that you could explain the Mechaber. Why is the Mechaber telling me that I could pay him if he needs the money? Mishum deroitz alasayim, because the Mechaber is going to finish off by saying, V'im einoi ma'aminoi, if you don't trust the craftsman and you're afraid he's taka going to claim double money from you, menichan babayas hasamachloi. So then the eighth is, take your plow from the craftsman, but do not bring it home. Put it by somebody else's house that lives nearby you. Maybe that's why the Mechaber gave this case. Okay, let's read it back inside in the Shulchan Aruch now. So the Shulchan Aruch said, V'im ein lo uman ma yoichal. If you're paying the craftsman because he desperately needs your money, still, this is the way the Mishnah Berurah learned, noisen lo yischarei, pay him, but umanichan etzloi, and leave your item by him. V'im einoi ma'aminoi, but if you don't trust the craftsman, and you feel that you must pick up your item from the craftsman, otherwise he's going to claim double money from you, then pick it up, but manichan bebayas hasamachloi. But don't bring it home. Don't bring it to your house. Bring it to some neighbor. V'im chayshish shema yignavu, and if that's also not an eitzah, if you don't have a safe place to put the item, you're afraid wherever you're going to put it, it's going to get stolen. Mefanon lechatzar acheres. So put it into a different chatzar. Bring it to a different chatzar that's a protected chatzar where you feel safe. But don't bring it to you. Avalo yiviem lebeisai. Don't bring it to your house. Ella bitzina. If you have a very discreet way to bring it to your house, no one will see that you're bringing it to your house, then you could bring it to your house if you could do it bitzina. But if you can't do it bitzina, we don't want you to bring it to your house. But that's for the reason we saw earlier in the Mishnah Berurah. If somebody's going to see that you picked up the item and you brought it to your house, they're going to think you gave it in for repair. You gave it in for work on Chol HaMoed. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Chavetz Chaim l'char tzarchian. These words of the Mechaber are difficult. Him ein loy ma yoichal. The Mechaber is saying that if you have a craftsman who's desperate for your money, so then if you have no other eitzah, you could pay him and you could bring the item to your house if you do it bitzina. Asks the Chavetz Chaim, im ein loy ma yoichal, if indeed the craftsman doesn't have food to put on his table and he needs your money, lama lo yiviem befarhesia. Then why can't you pick up your item and bring it home to your house even in public? In such a case where the craftsman mamish doesn't have money, you're even allowed to give him something to do work on Chol HaMoed. If you have a Yiddish apayil who doesn't have food to put on his table, you're allowed to give him work to do on Chol HaMoed. So then why can't I pick up the work that he did? The Chavetz Chaim answers, he says, Yeshloimar, to become Makayim Aser, it's still forbidden to pick up the item. Because the person seeing you pick up your item from the craftsman doesn't know the situation of this craftsman. And if you're not allowed to pick up the item from the craftsman because people aren't aware of his financial situation, that he doesn't have food to put on the table, certainly he's not allowed to do malacha. A craftsman who doesn't have money is not allowed to do malacha b'farhesia. Not everybody understands that he's doing the malacha because he's desperate. He needs money to put food on his table. So when he does malacha, it's mutter for him to do malacha, but he has to do it bitzina. Okay, before we go to Siman Taf Kuf Lamed Hey, I want to give some closing thoughts on the malacha of kivus, the malacha of laundering on Yom Tov that we just discussed in this Siman. So basically we said like this. In reality, there isn't really, kivus, laundering, is not really a malacha that would be aser on Chol HaMoed, because if it's kibus that you're doing l'tzarech hamoed, if you have to wash something l'tzarech hamoed, you had Kenai Nahara, a lot of your married kids going through your house on Yom Tov, and you need linen. So you're washing the linen l'tzarech hamoed. You need another white shirt for Yom Tov. So you're washing the white shirt l'tzarech hamoed. So really that kibus is being done l'tzarech hamoed. It's malacha you're doing for the purposes of Yom Tov, and it's not a maisa uman. It's not something that takes a professional or a craftsman. It's a maisa hedyot. So really, if we look at the malacha of kibus just from a malacha standpoint, we would think that kibus l'tzarech hamoed should be mutter on Yom Tov. Why is it aser? It's aser because the Chazal made a takana and they said, we are afraid that if you're allowed to do laundry on Chol HaMoed, you're going to get busy before Yom Tov. Erev Yom Tov is a very busy time. And you're not going to do laundry before Yom Tov. You're going to leave your laundry for Chol HaMoed. And now, when it comes Yom Tov night and you're ready to get dressed, you're not going to have a clean white shirt. And you're going to come into the Moed, you're going to come into Yom Tov Kishu Manuvel. You're not going to come in dressed with clean clothing. And remember, you have a chiyuv of kavod v'ainig on Yom Tov. Ksus Nikia is a chiyuv on Yom Tov. So we're afraid, if we allow you to do laundry on Chol HaMoed, so you know, okay, worst comes to worst, I'll do laundry on Chol HaMoed. Then you're going to realize you don't even have one clean shirt, and the first day's Yom Tov, you're not going to be dressed clean. So in order to make sure that you do your laundry before Yom Tov, the Chazal asked you from doing laundry on Yom Tov. They said no laundry on Yom Tov, even if it's l'tzarech hamoed. That way, why? So you shouldn't come into Yom Tov in a disheveled state. Now, the Achronim struggle. Once the Chazal made this takana, once they said you can't do laundry, what does that mean? Did they now elevate it to a malacha which is aser? It could be that once they made a takana that you can't do laundry on Chol HaMoed, they elevated this malacha of kibbutz to a malacha that is aser on Chol HaMoed. That would explain why we are machmir, like the Mishnah Berurah said on Hey Amud Aleph, in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Vav, near the bottom of Hey Amud Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah said that even though the Mechaber says that really hand towels and bath towels and the like are things that you're allowed to wash, the Mishnah Berurah tells us that the Kolbai and the Eliyah Rabbah says that we achshav nagu bazeh chumra v'chein royal asais. We're machmir. And it could be that one of the reasons for that chumra is that once the Chazal made this takana that you don't do laundry, they elevated it because like this you would ask, because of the takana that I shouldn't come into Yom Tov Kishum Novel, what does that have to do with towels? The answer may be, one answer would be, that the Chazal elevated laundering now to a malacha that's not done on Yom Tov. Or you could say that no, they didn't elevate it to a malacha that's aser on Yom Tov, but once they made a takana and they said no laundry, now they don't care what you're throwing into the washing machine. Once they said no laundry, it's not only your clothing that you're not allowed to wash, it's also your towels and your linen that you're not allowed to wash. But in any case, halacha l'maisa, it seems, you're not allowed to do laundry on Chol HaMoed. That should be your starting position. Your starting position is you are not allowed to do laundry on Chol HaMoed. Now, there are certain heterim. There are certain cases where we have a heter to do laundry on Yom Tov. Those heterim, I think, can basically be broken down into two categories. We have one category where you are recognized as having a particular oinus. There are certain oinsim. There are certain cases where we look at you and say that you had no choice. You're forced to do the laundry on Chol HaMoed. For example, the cases that we brought down here in Tafkuf Lamed Aleph, and the cases that we brought down when it came to taking haircuts on the Moed. If you were in prison before Yom Tov, so we recognize, and everybody knows you were in prison before Yom Tov, you got out of prison on Yom Tov, or you got out of prison very late on Erev Yom Tov, so there's a recognizable onus. You couldn't possibly do laundry before Yom Tov. Since you have a particular onus that prevented you from doing laundry before Yom Tov, you could do laundry on Chol HaMoed. So you got out of prison, you got out of captivity, you were in Cherem, Bezdin had put you in Cherem, and they released you from Cherem on Chol HaMoed. You had a neder, you were beholden to a neder, to a vow that prevented you from doing laundry. So it was absolutely impossible for you to do laundry on Erev Yom Tov. You could do laundry on Chol HaMoed. But you don't have the right to go ahead and pick your onus. You can't just say, oh, I had an onus. I was driving on Erev Yom Tov and I had a flat and I had a crazy Erev Yom Tov and my refrigerator broke down and I was busy with the repairman, so I had an onus. I couldn't do laundry. No, it's only particular onsim that are mentioned here in Shulchan Aruch. Those onsim, the onsim that you got out of prison, the onsim that you got out of captivity, the onus that you were in Cherem, those onsim that are mentioned by the Poskim, those are onsim that are recognized onsim, and if you had one of those onsim, you could do laundry on Chol HaMoed. That's one category of heter. Then there's another category of heter. There is another category where the takanas chazal, the takana shelo yikanes lemoed kishu manuvel, doesn't apply. The takana doesn't pass in this case. For example, mi she'en lo yeh chalak echad. Somebody only has one shirt. Somebody only has one shirt. It's not possible for him to go through Yom Tov without doing laundry. He has no choice. What are we going to do? We're going to say you can't do laundry on Chol HaMoed because we don't want you to come into the Moed. We want to make sure that you do laundry before Yom Tov. Even if I do laundry before Yom Tov, I'm going to have to do laundry again on Yom Tov. You're not going to make a takana and tell me I have one white shirt. I can't wash my white shirt on Chol HaMoed because you want to make sure that I wash my white shirt before the Moed. Even if I wash my white shirt before the Moed, I still have to wash my white shirt on Chol HaMoed. So in that case, the takanas Chazal doesn't make sense, and therefore it doesn't apply. The same thing, a woman who became a nida on Yom Tov and she needs levanim, she needs white garments on Chol HaMoed, it doesn't pass to say that she can't wash her levanim on Chol HaMoed because we want to make sure that she washes her levanim before the Moed. The takana doesn't make sense in that case. Also, the begadim of a katan. If you have young children in the house, who, we said young children, according to some paiskim, means up to the age of 6 or 7. According to other paiskim, it means as long as they're not bar mitzvahed yet, and they're still the type of child who tends to get dirty very frequently. So again, over there, by children who are always getting dirty, what are you going to say? I can't wash their children on their clothing on Chol HaMoed because you want to make sure I wash them before the Moed. Even if I wash them before the Moed, I have to wash them on Chol HaMoed. So these are particular cases where you have a heter to do laundry on Chol HaMoed. Now, if your 14-year-old comes home from yeshiva and he has 6, 7 white shirts, and now he comes to you on Chol HaMoed and he says, "Oh, mommy, I don't have a clean shirt for the second days." What do you mean you don't have a clean shirt for the second days? Why don't you have a clean shirt for the second days? Well, I was running around outside and when I was eating, I spilled grape juice and da-da-da-da. You're not allowed to wash shirts for him. There's no heter. He's not a cotton. He's not a cotton who the derech is that he should get dirty all the time. He's an adult. He has to know he's a bar mitzvah. He has to know that he has to make sure he has clean clothing before Yom Tov, and it has to last him through Yom Tov. And if you're stuck, you might have to go buy him a shirt. Now, if it comes up, Lamaisa, go ask a Shaila. But I don't think you have a heter in that case. You got to go buy him a shirt, buy him another shirt. But you have to tell your children before Yom Tov, listen, you have enough shirts to take you through Yom Tov. You got to make sure to stay clean through Yom Tov so that you have what you need. And make sure you do your laundry before Yom Tov. Don't come on Chol HaMoed and say, I forgot to do laundry before Yom Tov. That's exactly what the takana is. The takana is you cannot do laundry on Chol HaMoed because you got to make sure that you do your laundry before Yom Tov. So you got to tell your kids, they come home from yeshiva, make sure you did your laundry before Yom Tov. Or bring me, if you're very nice and you do the laundry for them, bring me your laundry before Yom Tov so I make sure it's all done before Yom Tov and you have what you need for Yom Tov. But you can't just come on Chol HaMoed and say, oh, Tatala, you need another white shirt and you need more socks, I'll wash them for you. No, you got to make sure that you have what you need before Yom Tov. The same thing is true by towels and by linen. Now, linen could be a challenge for some families. You have a large family, and 2 of the marrieds are coming the first days, and 1 of the marrieds are coming for Shabbos Chol HaMoed, and 2 marrieds are coming for the second days, and you want to wash all the linen in between. It's not easy to find a heter to wash linen on Chol HaMoed. Even if it's L'tzarech HaMoed, you're not allowed to do laundry on Chol HaMoed. Even L'tzarech HaMoed, you're not allowed to do it unless it fits into one of the heterim. And I don't see how linen fits into one of the heterim. And I spoke to Paiskim about it as well. One Paisik told me, he Kanai Nahara has a bunch of married children. He tells them, you're coming for Yom to bring your own linen. Another Paisik told me, what's the problem? Go ahead, buy linen. It's a tzarech hamayid, it's a tzarech Yom Tov, it's covered Yom Tov. The Rabbeinu Shalom will pay for it. That's Hitzarech Yom Tov and Hitzarech Shabbos, that's free. The Rabbeinu Shalom pays for it. Just realize that you're doing it covered Yom Tov. It's Hitzarech Yom Tov. So make sure you have enough linen sets that you could set your linen up for all of your kids as they come through the house on Yom Tov. Okay, I think that's basically what I wanted to say. I think a lot of people are makel. I think a lot of people don't understand the extent of this isser of doing laundry on Yom Tov. And they think, if I need it, if I'm short, I could always wash. Now, if you are washing for a cotton, if you do have a cotton in the house and you're throwing stuff into the machine to wash, and you need towels, l'tzarech hamayid, or you need linen, l'tzarech hamayid, then you might be able to find a heter to throw that stuff in at the same time. There's already a shaila that you can go to the Rav and you could ask the Rav, I'm doing laundry already for the cotton, beheter. Maybe you could find a heter, since there are those poskim that hold that you're allowed to wash towels. The Aruch HaShulchan doesn't even bring down the chumrah that you don't wash towels on Yom Tov. So it could be that towels and linen, if you're already washing for a cotton, so you already have a heter to start up the machine and throw stuff in the machine, could be you could find a heter to also throw in the towels and the linen. That's already something that's worthwhile. You could go ask a Rav. Okay. Now we turn to Vav Amud Aleph to Siman Taf Kuf Lamed Hey. Now, I'm going to give you just a word of warning before we go into Taf Kuf Lamed Hey. I always say that the hardest sugyas are sugyas that involve a lot of Isurei D'Rabbanan. And Chol HaMoed is definitely one of those sugyas. As we said at the outset of Chol HaMoed, according to some shittas, Chol HaMoed, the Isser of Malacha on Chol HaMoed is a fascinating prohibition. We have over here an Isser Daraisa, it could be. Some shittas hold that the Isser Malacha on Chol HaMoed is an Isser Daraisa, but it's an Isser Daraisa that was handed off to the Chachamim. The Chachamim set the parameters. The Chachamim make the Gedarim of what's Aser and what's Mutter. So it's an Isser Daraisa, but it's left up to the Chazal to define what's Mutter and what's Aser. The Rabbanans form the most difficult sugyas. This siman over here, the Mishnah Berurah is very vague. The Mechaber and the Mishnah Berurah together, very vague. It's very hard to find the Gedarim of what exactly is Aser and what's exactly Mutter. I'll do the best job that I can. Tafkuf Lamed Hey Shaloi Lefanais V'Chatzer L'Chatzer B'Chol HaMoed. The prohibition, literally, to clear out or move items from one Chatzer to another Chatzer on Chol HaMoed, Ubay Gimel Seifim, and here we have 3 Seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph. Ein mefanen mechatzer lachatzer. We're not allowed to clear out items and to transfer items from one chatzer to another chatzer. Afilu mikura l'noah. Even if we're going from a less pleasant dwelling, a ku'ura literally means a unpleasant, disgusting dwelling, l'noah, to a nicer one. And the Mechaber continues, loy lefanais dirasai. This prohibition covers moving. If you're moving from one dira to another one, you want to move from one apartment to another apartment on Chol HaMoed. So that is an Isser, ein mefanen mechatzer lachatzer. If you want to move from one house in Chatzer Aleph to another house in Chatzer Beis on Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to do that. And continues the Mechaber, v'loy lefanes kelav she'enam l'tzarech hamayid. Or maybe we're not talking about moving. One case, the first case of the Isser is you lived in an apartment in one Chatzer, and now you want to move from that apartment in Chatzer 1 to a different apartment in Chatzer 2. Now there's also another Isser. Even if you're not moving, I'm not uprooting myself and changing my dira, but what I want to do is I have a garage in Chatzer Aleph, where I have a lot of merchandise. And I want to move that merchandise from Chatzer Aleph to a storage unit in Chatzer Beis, or to my house in Chatzer Beis. So I'm not moving my dwelling place, but I have merchandise that I want to move. You're not allowed to move your dwelling place. You're also not allowed to move your merchandise from one Chatzer to another Chatzer if the merchandise that you're moving is Einam L'Tzarech HaMoed. If it's not for the purposes of the Moed, it has nothing to do with Yom Tov. Okay, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here. Mishnah Berurah is Cotton Aleph, very important Mishnah Berurah. Ein mefanen. You're not allowed to clear out stuff from one Chatzer to another. Mishum tircha. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what's the basis of the Isser over here? The Isser over here is tircha yisera on Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed is a time for you to eat and drink l'kavod Yom Tov. It's a time for you to spend time in shul. It's a time for you to spend time in the Beis Medrash. It's a time for you to spend time with your family enjoying Yom Tov. It is not a time for you to be moving things around, to put on your work clothes and clean out a storage unit, or it's not a time for you to move. Moving, everybody knows, is a major tercha. So don't schedule your move for Chol HaMoed. A person will say, I'm taking off Chol HaMoed, I'll move during Chol HaMoed. No, you don't move during Chol HaMoed. It's a terchi yisera. Ois cotton bays, the Mishnah Berurah says. If you notice, the Mechaber said, you're not allowed to do this mechotzer lechotzer, from one courtyard to another courtyard. Derech rishus harabim dehu mefurzim, says the Chavetz Chaim. Usually, when you go from one chotzer to another chotzer, the style that the houses were set up in the times of the Mishnah, the times of the Gemara, you had a bunch of houses opening onto a chotzer. The chotzer opened up onto rishus harabim. So if you moved from a house in Chotzer Aleph to a house in Chotzer Beis, you had to go through the Rishos Harabim. Says that now the Mishnah Berurah notes that's what the Mechaber says. The Mechaber says that when does this prohibition take place? This prohibition applies when you're moving from one Chotzer to another Chotzer, so that you're moving through the Rishos Harabim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Derech Rishos Harabim dehu mefurzim. This applies when you're going through Rishos Harabim, so the fact that you're moving, or the fact that you're moving your merchandise, is very publicized. It's avsha milsa. Everybody knows about it because you're doing this through the Rishos Harabim. The imkain, if the Mechaber says that this Isser only applies when you're going through Rishos Harabim, that gives us a heter. That gives us an out, says the Chavetz Chaim. V'imkain, if so, let's say, theoretically, im yesh Pesach ben shtei chatzeros, let's say Chotzer Aleph and Chotzer Beis were adjoining each other, so that you do not have to go out of Chotzer Aleph into the Rishos Harabim and then into Chotzer Beis. Maybe there's a fence between Chotzer Aleph and Chotzer Beis, and there's a gate in the fence. So you could go directly from Chotzer Aleph into Chotzer Beis without ever going through the Rishos Harabim. In that case, im yesh Pesach beit shtei chatzeros, mutter lefanos mizuluzu. Then it would come out that it is indeed mutter. It would be permissible to move from one chotzer to the next chotzer. Va'afilu derech kama chatzeros mutter. Let's say you have 5 chatzeros that are all adjoining each other. Just they have fences dividing in between them. So you never need to go out to the Rishos Harabim. You could just go from chotzer number 1 through Chotzer number 2, into Chotzer number 3, into Chotzer number 4, and finally to your destination in a new house in Chotzer number 5. So you're going to move from Chotzer number 1 to Chotzer number 5 without ever having to go through the Rishos Harabim. So there's no farhesia. You're never going out into the Rishos Harabim. In that case, says the Chavetz Chaim, that would be mutter. Now, immediately the problem that we have with this Mishnah Berurah is hold it. The Mishnah Berurah told me in Ois Cotton Aleph that the reason you're not allowed to move on Chol HaMoed is because it's terchi yisera, and it's a level of tercha that is not appropriate for Chol HaMoed. So if the problem over here is tercha, how does it help me that I'm not going out into the Rishos Harabim? Certainly moving from Chotzer number 1 to Chotzer number 5 is still a terchi yisera, even if I'm not going through the Rishos Harabim. And the answer is, we're going to have to say that what the Chavetz Chaim means over here is, if the level of tercha is a tercha yisera, then it doesn't matter whether you're going out to the Rishos Harabim or not. If it's a move like the moves that we do nowadays, with Kanainara, most people, even people who are not so financially well off, have a ton of stuff and a lot, and moving is a major tercha. So if it's really a bona fide tercha yisera, then you're not allowed to move, even if you're not going through the Rishos Harabim. The question is, when there's a middle case. Sometimes you have a case where the tercha is not such a great tercha. But then there's another problem, and that is that even though the tercha is not necessarily a great tercha, but if you do it through the Rishos Harabim, that's avsha milsa. If people see the moving truck pull up to your house and they see you're going through the Rishos Harabim, so everybody sees that you moved, they don't know that you only moved a few items and it wasn't such a big tercha. They don't know that really maybe most of your move was done before Yom Tov and you're just finishing up your move on Yom Tov and there's not that much tercha involved. But you're going through the Rishos Harabim and these people don't know that. So if you're going through the Rishos Harabim, then we can't be matir even a lesser level of tercha. But if you're not going through the Rishos Harabim, if you're only going through the chatzeros, and it's not going to be so publicized, it's not going to be avshamilsa, then if it's a lesser level of tercha, then perhaps we could be matir it. And this same thought process is going to run through the words of the Mishnah Berurah throughout this Siman, I think. Let's go weiter. Ois Katan Gimel, the Mechaber's words were, Ein mefanen mechatzer lechatzer. You're not allowed to move from one chatzer to another. Afilu miku'ur l'noah, even from a disgusting dira to a pleasant dira. And then the Mechaber said, Ve, with a vav, Ve loy lefanes dirasai. And you can't change your dwelling place. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there's a typo here. That vav has to come out. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cotton vav, v'loy lefanos, tzarech lamer loy. The Gra takes out the vav, so that what the Mechaber is doing is he's explaining to you the two prohibitions that are included in his first phrase. His first phrase was ein mefanen mechatzer lechatzer. You're not allowed to move from one chatzer to another. Then the Mechaber explains loy lefanes dirasai. This means you're not allowed to actually move your dwelling place. You're moving from one house to another, or from one apartment to another, from in one chutzner to an apartment to another chutzner. Or even if you're not moving, you can't move merchandise. You can't move your stuff from one chutzner to another if the moving that you're doing is not l'tzarech hamoed. Ois katan daled she'enam l'tzarech hamoed. Mashma, the implication is the l'tzarech hamoed. If the moving stuff that you're doing is a tzarech hamoed, af befarhesia mutter, then you're allowed to do it even in public. Davar shehu yaduah v'nikar shehu l'tzarech hamoed. As long as people realize and they can see that what you're doing is a tzarech hamoed. So, for example, if you're moving a sukkah on Chol HaMoed sukkahs, so then people see that what you're doing is tzarech hamoed. They see you moving lighter sukkah panels. I'm not putting in a plug for lighters. It could be monk sukkah panels too, sukkah outlet, whatever. They see, or your own homemade wooden sukkah panels, but they see you moving sukkah panels on Yom Tov. They understand that what you're doing is a tzarech hamoed, then it's okay. Now let's go weiter. First, let's see the words of the Ramah, Hagah. Certainly you can't move your possessions. Mamoinai doesn't mean your money, it means your assets, from one city to another. Continues the Mechaber. Aval, what are you allowed to do? Mefanuhu mibayis labayis ba'oisa chatzer. You want to move from one house to another house within the same chatzer, that you're allowed to do. Now, this is going to be very key. Let's see why this is mutter. Why is this mutter? Now again, we have spoken so far about two factors that create an isser in moving on Chol HaMoed. One is the tercha, and one is the public nature of what you're doing, and people see you doing something that is generally very much a tercha. Now the Mechaber just told me, if I'm moving from one house to another house within the same chutzner, that's okay. Why is that okay? So let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Katan Hay. And the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Hay says two reasons. He knocks off both factors of Isser. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why is this mutter? Deleka tircha kulei. Moving from one bias to another bias in the same chutzner is not the same level of tircha. If it would be the same level of tircha, it's a tircha yisera and we can't be matir it. The second reason is v'gamhu b'tzina. And it's a lesser level of tircha, and also you're not going through the Rishus Harabim, and therefore it's betzina, it's not befarhesia, it's not afshamilsa, it's not a zilzal of Chol HaMoed. People don't look at you and say that you're doing something that's inappropriate for Chol HaMoed. So what do we see? What do we see over here in this Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Hay? We see very clearly that there are two factors that you need in order to be matir a move on Chol HaMoed. You need that it's leka tircha kulei hai, and you also need that it should be betzina. So that means that when the Mishnah Berurah earlier in Ois Katan Beis said that if you have adjoining chatzeres that open one to the other so that you never have to go out into the Rishus HaRabim, then it's a mutter to move. That's only if it's also not a tircha kulei hai. It also has to be a lesser level of tircha. But let's say theoretically, let's say Ruvain is moving from Chatzer Aleph to Chatzer Beis, and he has a 5-bedroom apartment, and his move is a tremendous tircha, and he's moving from Chatzer 1 to Chatzer 2, and he has to go out to the Rishus HaRabim. That's Asr, because it's a tircha Yisera, and it's Befaresia. That's Ruvain. Now you have Shimon. Shimon is also moving. Shimon also has a 5-bedroom house. And Shimon maybe even has even more possessions than Ruvain. Maybe his house is even bigger. And he happens to be moving within the same chutzner. But his tircha is just as much tircha as Ruvain's. Maybe Ruvain's tircha, maybe is even a little bit less. Maybe he's going from Chatzer 1 to Chatzer 2, and it's only a half a block away. And Shimon lives in a very, very big chutzner. He lives in one of these big complexes in Lakewood. That's a huge chutzner, but it's a very big complex. He's moving. I don't know if Westgate is really one chutzner. I'm not postulating that it is. I don't know what the facts on the ground are. But you have one very, very big complex. It's one big chutzner. He's moving 20 blocks from one end of the chutzner to the other. So the tircha is the same tircha. But you want to say that it's Petzina because it's in the same chutzner. I never went out to the Rishus HaRabim. That's not going to make it mutter. It's still a tircha yisera. The only way that we're going to make it mutter is it has to be a lesser level of tircha, and it has to be betzina. This is what I meant when I said that the words of the Mechaber and the words of the Mishnah Berurah are a little bit vague. You have to pull out between the lines over here what the root of the Isser is and what the requirements are in order for this moving to become mutter. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here, nice cut and hay. If it's like a tercha kulei, if you're moving from one apartment to another apartment within the same chutzner, so it's not av shemilsa, because you never go out to the Rishus HaRabim, then it's mutter, because it's not such a tercha, and it's not av shemilsa, and then you're allowed to do that even if you're not moving into another apartment that belongs to you. You're moving from one apartment that belongs to your friend to another apartment that belongs to your friend. The chiddush of that we'll see in a moment. Continues the Mechaber. Let's say you're moving from one house to another house, and neither house is situated in a chutzner. They're both on the mavui. They're both, so to speak, on the Rishus HaRabim. Yesh Omrim, there are those that say, Shemi bayis labayis hasamach loy muter. You're allowed to move from one house right next door, even though it's on the Rishus HaRabim. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and vav, labayis hasamach loy muter, the bechlal tzinahu. Even though both houses are located on the main thoroughfare, so both houses open mamish onto the Rishus HaRabim, from one house to the house next door is considered betzina. That's not av shemilsa. It's not a big move. It's not a moving truck pulling out from here and driving over there. You're just moving right next door. And it's also not such a tercha, because you're moving from one house right next door. It has to be. It has to be that it's betzina and not such a tercha. Again, if it was a tercha yisera, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. I'm sorry. The Bach says even next door you're not allowed to move if it's in the Rishus HaRabim. If it's like a cul-de-sac, then you could do it, because a cul-de-sac is more private, it's more betzina. Now says the Ramah Haga, let's say you have items that you want to move out of your chutzner because you're afraid your merchandise is going to become stolen. You're an electronics dealer. You have a lot of very expensive laptops, and in your chutzner you're afraid they're going to get stolen. So you want to move them from your chutzner to another chutzner in Chol HaMoed. Says the Ramah, mutter afilu min chutzner lechutzner hamishtamer. That's mutter. You could take them totally out of your chutzner and bring it to a different chutzner that's better protected. Va'afilu me'ir le'ir. You could even move it to a different city on Chol HaMoed. But davar ha'ovid shari. Over here it's a question of a davar ha'ovid. You're afraid your stuff is going to get stolen. That's a davar ha'ovid. You're not mechuyev to take a loss. So that you could move even a tercha, even av shamilsa, you could do it on Chol HaMoed. Now let's go to Sif Beis. I know we're going a little bit long, but let's go to Sif Beis. Yesh matirim. There are those that are matir, rush, lefanois mechotzer shel acher lechotzer shaloi, va'afilu mina lekuura. There are those that are matir to move your dwelling place, to literally move from one chotzer, from an apartment in one chotzer to an apartment in another chotzer, if what you're doing is you're moving, you used to live by somebody else, and now you're moving into your own apartment. Then there are those that are matter that, even if you're moving from a nicer apartment to a less nice apartment, because there's a simcha that you're moving into your own apartment. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Zayin, L'chotzer Shaloi, the simcha la'adam shiyah dar b'shaloi, because it's a big simcha that you should live in your own place. Or lafanis kelim l'chotzer shaloi ein lahakel. But if it's not a question of moving your dwelling place, it's just that you have belongings in somebody else's chotzer and you want to bring it to your chotzer, that we're not going to be matir. That's not a simcha. V'dafka ba'ofen zeh, says the Mishnah Berurah, but only to be matir in such a case where you're moving, where you were living by somebody else, and now you're moving into your own quarters. Now we have to be careful to understand the words of the Mishnah Berurah here carefully. Aval mipnei shar hana, but if you want to move to gain a different benefit, to gain a different pleasure, not that you're moving into your own private quarters from living by somebody else. Kigoin, shahayadar eitzel chaveroi becheder echad. You had your own private quarters in somebody else's house. And now you rented a new apartment in a different chotzer where you'll have more room. So you had your privacy in the first place, and you're going to have your privacy in the second place, just so you're going to have better quarters, better accommodations. Even though the new accommodations are more pleasant, also lafanis, that you're not allowed to do. Because you don't have a heter. Let's say on Chol HaMoed, you want to move from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 3-bedroom apartment. That you're not allowed to do. That's called miku'ura l'na. That's the opening words in the Siman. Ein mefanin, you're not allowed to move mechatzer l'chatzer afilu miku'ura l'na. Even if you're going from a less nice apartment to a nicer apartment, you're not allowed to do that on Chol HaMoed. So if you had very private quarters that are miyuchet to you, you had your own room or your own 2 rooms in somebody else's house, and now you want to go to a new apartment that you rented in another chotzer on Chol HaMoed. You're not allowed to do that. The heter only is if you didn't have your own privacy. You were living by somebody else. You had an extra bedroom. You were using an extra bedroom in somebody else's house. But that's not miyuchet to you. That's not your own quarters. So then you want to move to your own apartment. You're allowed to move to your own apartment. If somebody was living in an apartment amongst Goyim, not in a Yiddish neighborhood, and now he wants to move to a Yiddish neighborhood or something similar to that, then a paisik, you should go to a paisik and ask a paisik, and depending on the situation, it could be that a paisik would be match to that. I'm going to go to Sif Gimel already. There's no Mishnah Berurah on it, so we're going to finish the Siman. Says the Mechaber Sif Gimel Hazevel Shebechatzer Asa Lahaitzi. Literally, you have dung in a chatzer, an agrarian society. You have a farm, you have livestock, and out in the chatzer, you have goats, you have cows, you have animals, you have chickens. And the zevel, the dung, the manure built up in the chatzer, you're not allowed to take the dung out from the chatzer. That's a tercha yisera. That's not a tercha that's appropriate for Chol HaMoed. Eli yisal kenu l'tzdadim. Don't take it out. Don't shovel it out of the chatzer and bring it to the dump. Just take the shovel and shovel it off to the side. But if it builds up to the extent that your chatzer is turning into a stable, then you can shovel it out of the chatzer and take it to the ashba. You're not mechuyev to live in a stable. Okay, so again, the root of the prohibitions here in Siman Tav Kuf Lamed Hey are a combination of tircha yisera. There's a level of tircha that is not appropriate for Yom Tov. I'll give you an example. If you live on a very nice block in Flatbush, and you have your own very nice, fully detached private house, and you have a detached garage in the back. And it's a nice big 2-car garage, and like most good Jews, you don't use your garage to park your car. You use your garage for your sukkah and for your 2 extra freezers, and for the last season's clothing and next season's clothing, and the gamach stuff that you keep in there, and your son-in-law's stuff, and your daughter-in-law's stuff, and your grandfather's stuff. So you have your whole big garage that's all chock full of stuff. And you decide on Chol HaMoed, I'm going to clean out the garage. So now on Chol HaMoed, you want to put on your jeans and you want to put on your work gloves and you want to come outside and empty out the garage into the driveway and sort through the stuff. That's not being mefana mechatzer lechatzer. You're not moving your kelim, you're not moving your stuff from one chatzer to another. You're doing it all in your driveway. But that's a tirchi yisera that's not appropriate for Chol HaMoed. That's not what Chol HaMoed is for. That's a zilzul. And especially if it's opened up onto the street, it's af shemilsa. People see what you're doing. They see that you're engaged in uvda dechayil. That's not something that's appropriate for Yom Tov. So there's a problem of tirchi yisera. There's a problem of av shemilsa. If something is going to be mutter, the cases that we had here in Tuf Kuf Lamaneh that are mutter, if you want to be mefana mibayis labayis ba'oisa chatzer, that the Mechaber said that you're allowed to do, that's like the Mishnah Berurah said, it's leka tircha kula hai. That's when you have a small move. It's not a big tircha. You're moving from the bungalows, from this unit to that unit. You have a few things to move, not a big deal. And it's not av shemilsa, it's not out in Rishus Harabim, it's not a zilzal Yom Tov. That's what's going to be mutter. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. I hope I'm doing a good job of giving this over. It's complicated stuff here. The schus of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all. The Rebbeinu Shalom should protect everyone. Everyone who needs a refuah should have a refuah. We should be zeicha finally to see the Bias Girl Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Be well.